try and keep it semi-short, but I am my father's son. So here we go. So I do. Yeah, I'm excited. I did teach on this a few weeks ago at the youth group, and I'm excited to share it particularly because just to kind of spoil the ending for you, just so you have some context, I want to talk about performing with excellence, like worshiping with excellence for the glory of God. And it was just all about like doing things well, excellence, put effort into your works. And I taught this on a Friday night, and it was just funny because I was feeling really down that day, and I went home that night and I sat down and I was like, man, like I didn't do well at worship, I didn't do good with the game, I didn't do good with the teaching, and I did a bad job. Ugh. And I sat down and I was upset. And then dad comes up to me, he's like, you should share that with the adults. And then I was pretty astounded, and then the irony kind of came across to me. I was like, oh, I'm trying to talk about excellence, but I'm feeling really bad about myself. Does that sound like the enemy to you? And so then I was like, okay, now I have to do this. So yeah, here I am. I'm excited. And yeah, this is kind of related to the Radical Worshipers series. So I recommend you check that out too, along with this. But my point today kind of comes in two parts. I believe a lifestyle of worship should follow God's definition of worship, which means worshiping in spirit and in truth. And those are the two things I want to talk about, but first I want to lay a little bit of foundation for you. So a lifestyle of worship, I want to single out that phrase a little bit, because the first thing I want to convince you of is that worship is not music. Worship is not the 30 minutes of music we just had up here. It's not done with instruments or voices, at least not exclusively, and that's just not what worship is. Instead, I want to change your mind and make you think a little bit more that worship is more of a lifestyle. Worship is done through the intent and actions of our hearts. And somebody else defined worship for me. I found it, and I want to read it just because I like it a lot. They said, worship is the posture of our heart bowing before God with an attitude of giving Him priority and glory in our lives. It isn't necessarily a song or a worship set. So I feel really passionately about that, and I just want to get you there. So first thing I want to show you is a verse from Romans chapter 12. It's verse 1. It says, I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. I like this verse a lot, especially because it ends with just that phrase, this is your spiritual worship. So I like this verse because it almost kind of works like a definition for me. And so what is the definition of spiritual worship? It says right there, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice. I like that a lot because if you're aware of the Old Covenant, sacrifices were usually done to an animal and you would kill the animal. But it says living sacrifice, and it mentions presenting our own bodies. And so what that kind of means to me, or what I got from that, is if you're going to sacrifice yourself in a living manner, then that means you're going to give 100% of what your bodies and your mind are capable of. And then to tie that back into my point in simpler words, really, it just means, to me, that means that pleasing God through our daily activities is the act of worship. So songs and music can definitely be part of the offering in our worship, but a lifestyle of worship is more than a song. It is in our daily action and intention. And I feel like we believe that in church. In this church? Am I right? Everybody believes that? We're all sharing the same foundation here? Great. Then we can move on because that's what I want to build this on. So, into my title verse, John 4:23 and 24. So it says, but the hour is coming and is now here when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth, for the Father is seeking such people to worship Him. God is spirit, and those who worship Him must worship in spirit and truth. I like this verse a lot too, because it tells us very directly what worshipers are meant to accomplish. Those who worship Him must worship in spirit and truth. And so those are two different things. They're both significant and equally important, but what do they mean? I want to break this whole thing into two schools of thought. What does it mean to worship in spirit? What does it mean to worship in truth? And how do they work together? So first, let's break off onto what it means to worship in spirit. The traditional meaning, again, if you're aware with the Old Covenant, worship back then was more of an external process. And what I mean by that is it was more like a list of actions and just tasks to complete to have technically qualified as somebody who worshiped. And it wasn't personal. Nobody could really tell. Like if I went up here and I accomplished the list, items 1, 2, 3, and 4, nobody in this room could actually tell whether my heart was actually in it or not, because I just accomplished something. Like I met a checklist is what I did. And that was worship back in the Old Covenant. And the New Covenant instead says worship is a real heart-based relationship, and it looks a lot of different ways. It's not a ceremony or a ritual. It's not that checklist anymore. It's more just about personal connection with God, and then our hearts have that relationship, and that's what can define worship for us. I think it looks a lot of different ways. To put that in a perspective that maybe you're more familiar with, if you have kids, the day you have kids, the doctor does not come up to you with a checklist and be like, congratulations on your kid. This is step 1 on how to have a relationship with your child. This is step 2, and this is step 3, and this is how you're going to spend the next 18 years. Just follow this checklist. That doesn't happen because we're just meant to build that heart-to-heart connection on our own and build that relationship up, and that's how we learn how that works. And so now it's the same way with God. We don't have a checklist to accomplish to have a relationship. We just connect our hearts to him, and that's how it works. And so that is what the traditional meaning of worshiping in spirit means. But while I was working on this message, I was praying about it, I was like looking into this verse a little bit, and then God kind of took me on a different path, and that's kind of where I want to take you. Let's see. Can I get Romans 12, 9 through 11? Yeah. Cool. So, let love be genuine, abhor what is evil, hold fast to what is good, love one another with brotherly affection, outdo one another in showing honor. Do not be slothful in zeal, but fervent in spirit. Serve the Lord. I love that a lot. I could not have worded it better myself, really, because I love just the adjectives there. Do not be slothful in zeal. You've seen a sloth move around, right? It doesn't care. It's not putting a lot of effort, or at least it just can't. And so, but it says fervent in spirit. It means be joyful, be full of zeal, do things with joy and excellence to serve the Lord in a joyful manner. And that's kind of the direction I want to go, and I have something to back that up. Who here has ever heard the phrase, "That's the Spirit"? Yeah, you've heard that phrase. It's a common phrase. You might have heard that. The context I imagine when I hear that, maybe you've seen like a high school football movie or something, and the main character, quarterback, whatever, is just really upset about it. He doesn't want to go out into the field because he's feeling bad about himself. He messed up somehow. And then the coach comes over, gives him a pep talk, and then now he's jumping up and down. He's like, I can do it. And he runs onto the field. And as he's running off, the coach says, "That's the Spirit." That's the context that comes into my head when I bring up that phrase. But what is going on there is this coach is really saying, there you go. That is the correct attitude and intention to be putting into your actions. And having the correct attitude and intention in the mind of the hypothetical football player means, great, I'm going to work hard to do a great thing, and I'm excited about it. And so that is what worshiping in spirit looks like to me. I think it means getting excited about it and doing a great job at it. And I want to further prove that to you using this bowl. Yeah, I'm going to do some weird things today. All right, so I have a bowl. And I want to paint a picture in your mind. I'm going to wrap a lot of my teaching around this bowl. So imagine this scenario. You're young, and your father begins to teach you how to be a potter. Pottery is made of clay, but this is plastic, so just bear with me. This is clay. So, your father teaches you how to be a potter. You grow up learning all the skills and the techniques you need to become an excellent potter. And now you're an adult. You've made a career out of this. Next thing you know, you're the best potter in town. You know what you're doing. And you have your dad to thank for that. And now his birthday is coming up. And for his birthday, you want to make him a bowl. Now, he's the reason you're great. He knows you're great. He's the one who made you that way. So how lame would it be if you brought him some subpar bowl that you made 30 minutes before his birthday party? That wouldn't be cool, would it? That's not the Spirit. And of course, he's your dad, so he'll love it anyway. But shouldn't you have given him 100% of your capability and your effort? Now, before I go into this next part, I want to reiterate something. If you've been going to this church for a while, you know this, but it's important that I bring it up. We do not earn our love and grace through our works. We know that here, right? We do not earn God's grace, his love, or anything through our actions, through our love. But my point that I'm about to drive in here is that our actions should still be wonderful and great and done with 100%. So, with that in mind, so that's not the Spirit, making a super bad bowl just because you didn't necessarily have to make a great bowl for him to love you, right? And I don't know a lot about pottery, but this is what I imagine this is what I imagine it looks like when you don't put very hard work into that. Maybe you pulled clay out at the last minute and you just kind of rubbed everything together real quick. Like, that's technically a bowl. There's no holes in the bottom, and it's that shape. So I'm going to throw it in the fire now, but now I'm late, so I'm going to take it out, and now there's a hole in the bottom, and as I drive over it, finishes drying, but now it's kind of pudding, and now it breaks in the first 3 minutes. And I want that to be a really clear image in your head. It's a very specific metaphor because it's relevant to me especially. I have a much broader way to apply this to everybody in the room, but if it's good with everybody, I'm going to apply it to myself real quick so you can understand what I'm going for here. So this metaphor is really specific and relevant to me because as a worship leader, I've heard a lot of people criticize the movement of technology in modern worship. I've heard people say things like, oh, why would you spend hours a week learning to play the correct guitar part, the correct piano part, or why would you do all this when you can worship with just an acoustic guitar and a singer and God will show up and nothing else matters? And you know what? That is true. And I would care if I was trying to impress men. Let me show you what I mean by that. Colossians 3:23 says, whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men. So let me put it this way. If God has blessed me with the skills and the passion to learn about technology and how to use it to worship his name, why would I give him something I didn't work very hard on when he knows I'm capable of more? The lights, the fog, the lead guitars, and everything that we want to have is not to impress men. It's to give God what I'm truly capable of. Let me back that up a little further. Psalms 96, verse 1. It says, oh, sing to the Lord a new song. Sing to the Lord all the earth. Seemingly very simple verse, but there's so much dimension added with just the word new in there. Because I think the word new implies that we are meant to create things. We're meant to improve on our existing conditions of worship with intention. In fact, I believe we're obligated to. We're obligated to make ourselves better, make our worship better, not to earn the love or grace of God, not to impress the people in the congregation, but because God is just worthy. So keep this in mind. I'm about to do something weird. I'm going to step over here for a moment so I don't get these fumes into the main part of the room. So just pretend I'm not doing this for a second. There we go. All right. That'll make sense in a second. So keep this in mind over the next, couple of months, couple of years, really, until Jesus comes back. Keep this in mind. As you start to see things improve around here, you may find yourself asking, why do we need all those new lights in the sanctuary? Does that make things more spiritual? Or why are you singing all these new songs that are coming out? Like, why are you writing new songs? Like, don't you know the old hymns work just fine? Like, why are you spending hours a week making sure your guitar sounds just right when it's more important that you just worship? And you know what? You're right. And that would bother me if I was trying to impress you. The old stuff did do just fine, but it's not. We're not doing it for impressing anybody else except God. It's because this is what we're capable of. We are going to grow and learn how to use cool lights and smoke machine and cool guitars and stuff like that because God's worth it and because that is how you make a pretty bowl. You work hard on it. You spend time on it. You don't throw it together 30 minutes before the birthday party. You work hard on it. So, it's just because it's what we're capable of. That's why we want to do extravagant things. Not to earn the love or the grace of God, not to impress anybody else, but because God is worthy. So, if you're having trouble wrapping your mind around that a little bit, let me sort of take a different perspective from a different point in time. Remember this, at one point in time, the acoustic guitar was a brand new invention. Up until that point, they had harps and flutes and things that did the job just fine. But then somebody looked at the guitar and said, I'm going to use that thing to glorify God. I don't know how to use it. I'm not very good at it yet. It's going to take me years. It's going to take me blood, sweat, and tears. And you know what? In the end, that acoustic guitar is not going to be any more capable of bringing his presence into the room, but he's still worthy. And honestly, I think when you go in with that mindset, I think it does do a little something for the presence. So this example that I'm giving you is very specific to a worship musician, but the message I'm telling you is not. Remember, because worship is a lifestyle, it's not a music set. So everything I just told you was regarding a music set, but worship is a lifestyle. So ask yourself, what do you do in the kingdom of God? What skills and passions and what are you capable of? What do you do in your personal life that can be considered worship? It's a real question, too. I can't answer it for you because I want that to be more broad. I want that to be more relevant to you. You go out into the world and everything you do is intended to be an action of worship. And so it should be done well. And then give this a thought too, just kind of like a little side note that I wrote in here. By giving God 100% of your effort and ability in your daily acts of worship, don't you allow him to work in greater ways in your life? Think of it this way. We are the hands and feet of God, aren't we? We read that a lot. If we're the hands and feet, imagine your own hands not giving you 100%. Imagine going to cook dinner one day, you start chopping some onions, and then 2 minutes into it, your hands they aren't doing it anymore. That's all they had to give, really. I wouldn't like it if my hands didn't give me 100% because I have a lot of things to do with these hands. And I think God has even more things to do with his hands, so I think we should give him 100% of our effort and capability, our mind and body. Cool. We are on the same page. All right, so that is my argument when it comes to worshiping in spirit, but what about worshiping in truth? There's a whole other school of thought there. Let's take a look at 1 John 3, 18 and 19. It says, "Little children, let us not love in word or talk, but in deed and in truth. By this we shall know that we are of the truth and reassure our heart before him." I read this verse and immediately a more common phrase that we hear all the time today popped into my head. What this means really is just actions speak louder than words. That's all that means. So why is that relevant to worship? Because wouldn't it make no sense to God if we are singing songs that say, like, God, I surrender my all to you. You can have all my life. All my praises are for you all day and all night. And then you go home and you forget to think about him for the next 6 days of the week. Your actions spoke louder than your words. And your words didn't make any sense because you didn't intend to follow them, right? And that's what worshiping in truth means to me. I have another phrase to ask you about. Who has heard the phrase, I'll be there in spirit? Yeah, I've heard that phrase. Imagine you're hanging out with your friends and you all want to go out to dinner and one of them says, oh, I have somewhere else I need to be. I like you and all, but I'm not there in truth. I'll be there in spirit. And that's a fine way to say I can't go to IHOP. But this is an unacceptable way to worship. If we sing, I give you all I am, you have my praises, my everything, we have to follow through on our word when the song is over. Otherwise, we say, I worship you, God, but just in spirit, I have somewhere else to be. So that is what I call hollow worship. I call it hollow worship for a reason, because I'm using my bowl again. So this bowl still means what I said it meant earlier. It's nice and pretty on the outside. This is worshiping in spirit, working hard, making a good bowl. But the bowl is also a vessel in which you bring your praises to God in. Think of it that way for a moment so we can go on this analogy ride together. So when you come to church, the 30 minutes a week, we provide you with a bowl. That's nice. 30 minutes a week, you don't have to make your own bowl. We made it for you. And we work hard in spirit to provide you with a good bowl. It has lights, has catchy tunes, all this good stuff. And we sing songs that say, God, you're worthy of all our praise. But here's the catch. We don't fill the bowl for you. We can't. Nothing we could ever do up here could ever fill this bowl for you. It's your own bowl. And you don't fill it on Sunday morning by singing along with us either. That's not how you fill the bowl. That's just how you make it prettier. You fill the bowl when you go home and you continue to follow your promises, what you said you were giving to God. Because when you sing, God, you are worthy of all my praise, I give you all that I have, what you're doing is you're labeling the bowl. My praises go in the bowl. This is what's in the bowl, God. You get my praises this week. Great. And if you follow through, you tell God what's in the bowl, you sing the songs, and then you go home and you live on those words, great. You put in the bowl what you said was in the bowl. But if you go home, you sing the words, you tell God what was in the bowl, and then you back out the rest of the week, what does it matter that your bowl looked good if it was empty? It's in good spirit to bring a nice bowl, but worshiping in truth is putting something in the bowl. Is it what you said was in the bowl? That's my point on worshiping in truth. So, yeah, worshiping in spirit means working hard and putting 100% of your effort and ability in, while worshiping in truth means following through on what you said was in the bowl. You made it pretty, you labeled it, but you got to put in it what you said was in it. So what do you do about it? So if worship is not a time of the service, it's a lifestyle, and honoring and glorifying God in every action we take, then my point is this. Because our daily actions glorify God, we should do all things with intention and with excellence. So when can you start putting that into practice? I love to ask the youth this question because I think it's really easy to listen to a good word and be like, well, yeah, that was a good job. That was a good job, Todd. Bye. And then take off and not do anything about it. But that's not what I want you to do. I like to challenge the youth at the end of any time I teach them with, how are you going to apply this next? When is the next application? Can I give you the opportunity to apply this? And so that's what I'm going to do with you today. For some of you, Your first opportunity to practice this starts in a couple minutes here when we end service, and the altar team's going to come up and pray for you, and they're going to do so with excellence. The tech team back there is going to make sure that everything is set up and recorded and finalized and ready to be shut down with excellence. The hosts are going to go in there, and they're going to make sure that everybody is happy going out. They have what they need. They have their Connect cards, whatever they need. They're going to make sure the trash gets taken out and all this good stuff. And all of these things, while they might seem like mundane tasks on the surface, they're acts of worship. They're acts of worship because we honor and glorify God by keeping his house of worship clean, by taking pride in helping each other. We honor and glorify God by making sure that new visitors can walk into this church, experience God, and not be turned away by any number of distractions that could have happened if we did not have faithful volunteers that showed up every weekend. So, if you're a faithful volunteer here, or you are part of another ministry another day of the week, then that is your opportunity to practice. If you are not currently part of one of those ministries, know that we are not short on ministries that need help. Because ministries are not meant to cap out, if that makes sense. We have a bunch of ministries, but we aren't planning on stopping making ministries anytime soon. We have dreams, we have big plans, we have lots of ministries we want to start, we haven't started yet, that are starting, and they all need your help. They all need somebody to come in and worship God with them. Yeah, I'm not going to list the ministries right now because I'm out of time. So that's one way to practice, but of course you don't just have to practice in the church building either. When you wake up tomorrow, you can go practice worshiping God as well in your place of work, your place of education, within your friend circles, all these amazing things. There's no place you can't worship God with your actions. In fact, you're meant to do it everywhere. So, in closing, can I get John 4:23 back on the screen? Or John 4:24. There you go. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth. So in every action you do, you're bringing him a vessel of worship. Is it something you worked hard on? Did you put your heart into it? Is it hollow or is it full? The bottom line is God has empowered you to create amazing things, more amazing things than you maybe even know you're capable of. So give him 100% of the effort, not 10, because that's the spirit of worship. And when you worship, follow through on your word. Give him your whole heart and your whole life. Give him what you said you were going to give him when you were singing, because that's how you worship in truth. And that is my point. Thanks. That means a lot. And as usual, I want to close with prayer, but, oh my gosh. So overtime. If you need to go, you may. But if you want to stick around, I would like to sing that closing song, Worthy of It All, again. So if I can invite the band back up, we'll pray for a moment, and then we'll sing that song. Oy, oy, oy. All right. Okay. I got it. So, Father God, we just thank you for the opportunity you've given us today to learn more about your word. Father God, we thank you for the opportunity to improve ourselves and to be driven to perform with excellence, not for your grace, not for your love, not for the impression of other people around us, but for you, God, because you're just worthy of it. Father God, I just pray that you start a fire in our hearts, a passionate drive to just do your will, and just to do it well with everything we have, with the spirit of worship. And I pray that you drive that, can I say, healthy conviction into our hearts to follow through on our word when we sing.